The Sunday Night's News now on BBC One with Michelle Hussein.
Tonight, British troops are pulling out of their last remaining base inside the Iraqi city of Basra. The 550 soldiers are joining the remaining British contingent at an airport on the outskirts of Basra. Downing Street says military commanders took the decision, part of the planned handover to Iraqi forces. Also tonight, remembering Rhys Jones. Hundreds join a vigil in memory of the murdered 11-year-old.
This has been a great shock to us. We believe that Rhys has gone to be with you, but that means he is not with us any longer.
Poor performing pupils could be forced to stay on at primary school under Conservative proposals. And India are back in the one-day series after beating England at Headingley. Good evening. British troops have begun withdrawing tonight from their last remaining base inside the Iraqi city of Basra. 550 soldiers stationed at Basra Palace are moving to join the remaining British contingent in Iraq at an airbase on the edge of the city. Downing Street said tonight the decision was made by commanders on the ground and is part of the ongoing process of handing over to Iraqi security forces. Here's our World Affairs correspondent, Alan Little.
British troops have been billeted here for more than 4 years. Basra Palace sits at the heart of a hostile city. It has been a security headache almost from the beginning. It draws enemy fire constantly. The pullout that began tonight will remove at a stroke one of the most dangerous tasks the British routinely face, running supply convoys through streets controlled by enemy militias. It now means that there will be, for the first time, almost no British troops stationed in the streets and communities where Iraqis live. The symbolism of that is powerful. After the invasion in 2003, the British controlled 4 Iraqi provinces. 3 of those have already been handed over to Iraqi security forces, trained by the British. In the 4th, Basra province itself, the training continues, but it's expected to be handed over by the end of this year. Leaving Basra Palace is the latest stage in a process that will, quite soon, leave a British force of some 5,000 at the airport, whose job will be what the government calls overwatch. The main base at Basra Airport is far from safe. It also draws heavy fire. And when all 4 provinces have been handed over, the question will soon assert itself. What purpose is served by keeping the troops in harm's way at all?
There's a limit now to what we can usefully do in Iraq, a limit which in my judgment has been reached to the extent that we ought to have a framework for the total withdrawal of all of our troops.
But is that possible when further north, Britain's ally, the US, is stepping up its presence, increasing the number of boots on the ground? After 4 years of transatlantic solidarity, the fortunes of Britain and America in Iraq are now sharply diverging. In Washington, there is unease about the quality of the security forces the British are handing over to. One senior US military advisor last month accused the British of bowing to defeat and of handing over to a security force that is riddled with anti-American insurgents and gangland militias, leaving the Americans to fill the security vacuum. The government strongly denies that. Tonight it said handing Basra Palace over to the Iraqis was an Iraqi initiative approved by the American-led coalition. Tonight's pullout might yet take several days to complete, but it has begun, and its meaning is plain. It is a milestone on the road that will, eventually, bring the British troops home. Alan Little, BBC News.
Well, let's get some analysis now. Carol Walker, our political correspondent, is in Downing Street, and Richard Galpin is in Baghdad tonight. Richard, how significant do you think this is?
I think this is a hugely significant moment. This is the last city where we have any British military presence. It is also the last province which is still under British control. Over the past year, we've had the British drawing down, pulling back from 3 of the provinces under their control. And now, with the move from the Basra Palace, we hear from the Ministry of Defence that they are seriously expecting that they will be handing over full security for the whole province within the next few months. They're saying it's going to take place this autumn. Now, having said that, the British troops insist that they will still have a role training the Iraqi security forces and, if necessary, intervening if there is an escalation in violence, and they're asked by the Iraqi security forces to come and help them.
Richard, thanks very much. Carol, what's the sense that you're getting from Downing Street? What are they saying about this?
Well, despite all you've heard there, Downing Street are playing down the significance of this, saying that it's simply part of the ongoing process of handing over to the Iraqi troops as and when they're deemed ready to take over security, and of course that it was done in consultation with the Iraqi government. Now, we think that Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, will make some sort of comment on this tomorrow, but we know that when Parliament returns in October, he's due to make a far more detailed statement about Iraq, and there is an expectation that this move will allow him to perhaps further reduce the overall numbers of British troops out there in Iraq, provided there's no big upsurge in violence. Of course, though, this is going to add to those tensions in the relationship with Washington, just as President Bush is trying to convince the American people that it's right to send in more American troops to see this pullback of British forces. And, of course, critics of the British involvement there are already pointing to this and claiming, as the Liberal Democrats are tonight, that this is a recognition that the role of British troops is now pretty limited and there should be a full withdrawal announced, a timetable for a full withdrawal, something that Gordon Brown has always refused to do.
Carol, thank you. Hundreds of people have gathered in Liverpool for a vigil to remember the life of Rhys Jones, the 11-year-old shot dead on his way home from football practice. Rhys's parents lit a candle in his memory and a young friend paid a moving tribute. From Croxteth, Nick Ravenscroft reports.
Our prayers, loving thoughts and heartfelt condolences are directed to you.
It was pouring with rain, but they came from all parts of the city. They wanted to show solidarity with Rhys's family, even those younger than Rhys himself.
Heavenly Father, we are sad this afternoon because someone we knew well and liked very much has died. We don't often think about people dying, especially when they are very young, so this has been a great shock to us. We believe that Rhys has gone to be with you, but that means he is not with us any longer. Help us to remember the good and happy things about him, and please comfort all who are unhappy. Amen.
Speaking in front of a crowd is hard enough when you're only 9, but more so when it's a vigil for a best friend. Many of those watching came from the estate where Rhys died 11 days ago, shot in the neck by a single bullet as he came back from playing football. Although there have been several arrests, all those questioned have been bailed or released without charge.
You will have no peace until you come forward. Do what is right. Tell the truth. And stand with us for a safer Liverpool and a safer world.
As music drifted over the crowds, many people were clearly moved by what they heard. But the mood was also determined. These people are angry at Rhys's death and the fact that somewhere in this city, his killer is still free. Nick Ravenscroft, BBC News, Liverpool.
Labour's General Election Coordinator has dismissed as nonsense claims that Gordon Brown could call an early election this week. But Douglas Alexander refused to rule out a possible election before the end of the year. He said the party would be ready whenever the starting gun is fired. Pupils with poor reading and writing skills could be forced to spend an extra year at primary school. That's under plans being considered by the Conservatives. David Cameron says he wants a schools revolution to improve basic skills. The government is to write to head teachers in England, urging them to raise the bar. James Westhead has more.
Oh, look at your writing. That's brilliant.
A new term and a new debate over schools. Amid growing evidence primary pupils' progress has stalled, the government's admitted it needs to do more.
Look.
Now the Conservatives have stepped in with their own ideas, the most eye-catching, keeping pupils back another year if they still can't read, write or add up properly by the end of primary school.
those children go on to secondary school and who haven't mastered the basics are perhaps more likely to truant, to fall into trouble, and certainly not to make the most of their potential. We think that is a tremendous shame.
At this party today for children about to return to school, parents weren't convinced by the idea of a remedial year, which has been dismissed by the government as a gimmick.
It could be stigmatising as well, and it could even lead to more truancy and more troubles, because no one wants to be in a class with children maybe 2-3 years younger than what they are.
We're putting too much pressure on them. You know, not every child is going to be as academic as others, and maybe we should concentrate on the areas that they're strong in.
As children enjoy their last days of freedom before school, the Conservatives sense a real opportunity, because despite billions of pounds of investment, basic skills in primary school have not improved as might have been hoped for. In fact, while literacy and numeracy among 11-year-olds improved initially, in recent years they've levelled off, still not reaching the government's target of 85% of pupils having maths and English to the expected standard. Now the school secretary, Ed Balls, has acknowledged progress has stalled and is writing to every school praising but also urging them to do more for underachievers.
It's not enough. We aren't delivering for every child. We must give a world-class education to every child in our country. It's economically necessary. It's also the right thing to do from the point of view of fairness.
But head teachers getting ready for the new term are sceptical of political complaints about school standards.
We don't think they're high enough. I don't think any head teacher is really satisfied with what they're doing. But we keep trying, the children keep trying, they're getting there. There will always be those that won't get there.
As politicians gear up for their new term, it seems schools may be returning as a key battleground. James Westhead, BBC News.
The Lebanese army has finally won control of a refugee camp in northern Lebanon after several months of heavy fighting. Militants accused of having links to Al-Qaeda took control of the Nahar al-Bared camp in May. 37 fighters were killed in today's operation. The chance of postponing motherhood may be a step closer after 2 leading British fertility clinics confirmed plans to offer a dedicated egg freezing service. The claim is it could help women to have a baby when they choose. But as Colette Hume reports, some experts are urging caution about the chances of success.
For some time, women, including those having treatment for cancer, have been able to freeze their eggs. But now 2 British clinics are offering the service on a commercial basis. Using a new technique, they claim many women could now postpone motherhood to a time of their own choice. At 38, Christina Charley has a successful career and a busy social life. But as she gets older, she's becoming worried about her chances of one day having a baby. Now she's considering the procedure.
It gives me flexibility, so I'm not tied down to thinking, oh my goodness, my biological clock is ticking away, so I've got to find someone tomorrow. I can still give myself some time and hope that, a few years down the line I might meet someone.
Doctors offering the treatment claim it has a better success rate than previous techniques for freezing eggs, perhaps up to 40%. Though the younger women are, the better their chances.
I think women will find this a rather liberating process, because they're not dependent on anybody else, and they are trying to avoid disappointment later.
The cost of collecting and freezing eggs is around £3,000. It's a procedure that not every woman will be able to afford. And some fertility experts are worried that even if the claimed success rates are realised, many women will still be disappointed.
Egg freezing has been problematic. It's not worked terribly well historically, and whilst vitrification, this new technique, is proving in laboratory studies to be reasonably good at meaning when the eggs are thawed that they're viable, there are too few studies, I think, yet to say whether or not this will actually translate into big success rates for women.
Some believe this technology could offer women the chance to make important decisions about how they shape their lives. But concerns about the success rate mean many could still be taking a gamble. Colette Hume, BBC News.
Now with news of today's Premier League matches and all the rest of the day's sport, here's Celine Hinchcliffe. Selina.
Yes, thank you. Match of the Day 2 is underway on BBC 2 if you want to see all the highlights from this weekend's matches.
The title race looks like it'll be much more open this season. Chelsea were beaten 2-0 today away at Aston Villa. Zach Knight scored on his debut for Villa. It's Chelsea's first league defeat in 18 matches. They missed out on the chance to go top of the table. Arsenal move up to second after a 3-1 win over Portsmouth at the Emirates Stadium. Cesc Fabregas continued his rich vein of form, scoring his 4th goal of the season. And in the day's other game, Blackburn beat Manchester City 1-0. Celtic returned to second place in the Scottish Premier League after a 5-1 win over St Mirren. It took 20 minutes for the first shot of the game, Scott Brown scoring to get Celtic off the mark. The Saints defender Franco Miranda deflected one into his own net before scoring this fantastic consolation goal. Celtic now trail the leaders Rangers by 1 point. India's cricketers are back in the one-day series against England. They won a rain-interrupted game at Headingley today. India hit 324 runs off their 50 overs. And even with a revised total of 311 for victory, England were never able to really challenge, as Joe Wilson reports.
Yeah, you've got to look down, you've got to look up at the cloud.
September in Leeds, where else for a cool dose of English realism. Sachin Tendulkar and India were put into bat and enjoyed it.
That's a great shot. That's pure timing.
India's top 4 all made 50s.
He'll take it.
For England's young bowlers, the luck was suddenly out. Oh, and so was Andrew Flintoff. Trouble with his ankle again. Yuvraj Singh belted a rapid 72 as India headed to 324, a total which looked beyond England. Poor old Stuart Broad, he went for 84 from his 10 overs. Ouch. Losing a wicket in the 4th over wasn't the start England needed in response. Cook gone for 4. And this wasn't the match when Kevin Peterson rediscovered his touch. 3 balls, no runs for him. Rain came, recalculations were made. Collingwood tried to score at 9 and over, but weather ended the match with England still well behind. To India, deserved damp victory. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Great Britain's women's 4x400 metre relay team have smashed the British record to win bronze at the World Athletics Championships in Osaka. The team of Christina Huragu, Marilyn Okuro, Lee McConnell and Nicola Sanders broke the previous national record by nearly 2 seconds. Sanders, who won silver in the individual event, ran the fastest leg by a British athlete ever to snatch bronze behind the USA and Jamaica. That's all the sport, Michelle.
Selina, thanks very much indeed. Now let's get the latest on the weather. That's with Susan Powell. Susan?
Thanks, Michelle. Good evening. The weekend's coming to a rather damp end for England and Wales, but already we are seeing drier and clearer conditions spreading into Scotland and Northern Ireland, and these will prevail right the way across the UK tomorrow. The sunshine a little deceptive though. I think it may feel fresher than you expect when you step outside, because we're going to start to pick up a northerly breeze behind this weather front here, which will clear to the south into the continent overnight tonight to leave us eventually with that drier weather. So quite a chilly night, particularly across the northern half of the UK, and that does mean a fresh start tomorrow, but the sunshine hopefully very good compensation, practically wall to wall across the UK throughout the day. Just a chance of some thicker cloud getting into the northwest by the time we get into the afternoon. That may make the sunshine a little hazy for western Scotland, but elsewhere it's looking glorious. But 21 we had in Aberdeen on Saturday, just 14 on Monday. It will feel rather different. For northern England, more spells of sunshine. Just a slim chance here, though, across the Pennines, through the Peak District and perhaps even into East Anglia, that we could pick up a few light showers during the afternoon. But essentially, as we move across southern England, we're looking at a dry story and top temperatures 19 or 20, so still feeling reasonable if you can just keep out of that light northerly, slightly fresh breeze. For Wales, pretty good looking end to the day as well, but for Northern Ireland, that thicker cloud will be approaching, and unfortunately for Tuesday, it looks like that will make its way into Scotland and northern England as well. So not quite as bright a day here on Tuesday, but for England and Wales, still more sunshine, and generally for the UK, the week ahead as a whole looks like it does offer a lot of dry and bright weather. Michelle.
Susan, thank you. And the main news tonight, British troops have begun withdrawing from their last remaining base inside the Iraqi city of Basra. That is the latest. There'll be news throughout the night over on News 24. From us, though, a very good night.